Well, hello. Welcome back to Sarah's Crafty Time. Today I'm going to continue my journey of hand sewing a skirt. On the docket today, I have the belt loops and the waistband planned for this video. So to start, I figured we should start with belt loops. And you know, this pattern labeled itself as intermediate, but I was expecting a little bit more instruction beyond make belt loops. I remembered that I have Google at my fingertips, and I discovered that most people use a pretty interesting method when they use a heavy material like denim or corduroy. And we're going to call it the fold again, sew the edges, and then cut into 4-inch strips method. So let's get into it. We're going to start by taking a 16-inch by 3-inch piece of fabric, and then we're going to fold that piece in half lengthwise, or if you were raised in the Midwest in the 90s, you might also know that as hot dog style. So imagine this piece of paper was the piece of fabric. We're going to fold it in half long ways, right? And then we're going to open that back up, and we're going to fold these halves in half again. So fold it in half, and then fold this one in half. So now we've got a little bit of a book, and we're actually going to just refold that original one, so we end up with a nice skinny long belt loop that we're going to cut into 4-inch strips once we have it folded. But now that we have it folded, we're going to pin the open edge closed, and then we're going to sew straight down that edge. And for this, I just used a simple running stitch. I'm not expecting belt loops to have a whole lot of like opening stress. I'm more expecting there to be like a pulling stress, where maybe your skirt gets heavy, you know, you got a lot in your pockets and your belt needs to hold it up. I expect there to be some strain at the very top and at the very bottom of the belt loop, but not opening. So we can just use a running stitch for this case. So I just sewed the whole length of this, and then I sewed a matching thing over here just so it would lay flat and it would look a little bit symmetric. It's probably not needed, but I thought it looked like the belt loops on my pants, so that's what I went off of. Once I had both long strips sewn, I just cut them into 4-inch strips, and it didn't matter that I was cutting across my running stitch because I was planning to do a back stitch across the entire thing anyway. So I didn't worry too much, and I just really was kind of careful with the strips. So now it's time to move on to the waistband. I followed the pattern's dimension of about 6-inch wide piece of fabric that you would also fold in half, hot dog style. Then I decided that this was the time I needed to figure out the exact length of the piece of fabric that I needed to work with. So I got out my measuring tape and I measured around my waist at the skinniest part where I wanted it to sit, because I'm hoping this to be like a high-waisted skirt. So I measured there, and then I added 4 inches to it. This way it will be kind of like a overlap there that you can have your button on the front for. And that way I'd have enough for seam allowance as well, because I want to have a finished edge. So now that you have all of your pieces, you've got your front 2 pieces, your back piece with the darts, your waistband, and your belt loops. Now it's time to pin them together and try to make a skirt. So what I did was I laid the folded in half waistband down with the open side up, and then I aligned the center of the back piece of the skirt with those darts, with the right side facing the waistband on the ground, and I centered both the waistband to the center of the back piece, and just pinned in that one spot. After that, I found my 2 front pieces, and I figured out that I wanted the straight edge of the skirt piece to be on the outside edge of the waistband, because we're going to want a nice straight line in the front of the skirt. And we want the curve to be on the side because that'll kind of match the shape of your hips, right? So I pinned the very edges to the edges of the straight edge, and then the center to the center of the back. So after I had pinned the front piece and the back piece to the waistband, I just continued to pin them until the seam allowance is met. And I'm assuming in this case that I'm going to have a lot of seam allowance because I was not very accurate at cutting out my skirt pieces. I just wanted to make sure I had enough that I could trim it away if I needed to, because you can't really add fabric in an easy way. So I was a little bit cautious, I'll say. I oversized my skirt pieces, so that's just something to think about when you try to do it. But after I had my skirt pieces pinned to my waistband, I wanted to space out where the belt loops are going to go. I wanted 2 belt loops to be centered to the pleats on the front skirt pieces. And then I also knew I wanted 2 belt loops in the very center back. And I thought, I have a couple extra. I should maybe do something interesting with the back. So I kind of positioned 2 of them to be in a V shape. That way I'll have a little extra strength right in the center back of the skirt, because I hate it when my belts kind of get that fabric that just kind of hangs in the back. If you've got kind of cheap pants or something like that, you don't have a nice belt loop in the very back. So I decided I have extra belt loops, I can do this. Then the other belt loops I just kind of positioned evenly between the front belt loops and the very back belt loops. You're gonna want to pin your belt loops between your skirt pieces and your waistband. That way, you only have to sew one time. Then when you open it, your belt loop is going to be coming right out of the same seam between the waistband and the skirt piece. Easy. So once all that pinning is done, it's time to actually sew your waistband to your skirt pieces. So for this, I did a very long back stitch. It took me a little while, but since you got this far and you've listened to me prattle this long, I'm going to reward you with some uninterrupted Crafty time lapse, and I'll catch up with you again once we have a semblance of a skirt. Well, hello again. At this point, I was too excited to not try on my skirt. So I pinned the front of the waistband where I might have a button one day, and then I did a fun little twirl. And I am just so excited about how far this skirt has come, and it's all just held together by stitches that I did one by one, right? So I'm just happy. This has been a really fun project. I did also sew the belt loops in place. I know in this, you see me spinning around, I have little pins everywhere. I was too excited to waste my time trying to get my belt loops sewn on to the skirt, but mine are there. Here's some proof. Be sure to tune in next time. I think it's about time that we sew those long seams between the front pieces and the back pieces, and maybe add some pockets. So until then, thank you for joining me, and happy crafting.